Welcome to the Scrybabies podcast. I'm Louis Sardis.
I'm Tori of the Vast.
Today we're going to be talking about Magic for beginners. So we talked a little bit about MagicCon on a recent episode and kind of like everything that you should bring to the con as a beginner. And at MagicCon this past weekend, we had a ton of people come to the booth and say that that episode really helped them out. So we thought we would put out another piece of like almost educational content. I don't know if we're educational content people.
No.
But we could do a couple pieces here and there to find some kind of helpful tips and tricks for you.
Yes.
So before we get much more into it, we're sponsored by TCG Player. We would like to thank TCG Player for sponsoring today's episode.
You can also head over to TCG Player to pick up the latest in Magic the Gathering, Universes Beyond. Right now, we have the Fallout set coming out this Friday. You can snag all 4 of the Precons or the Collector Boosters on TCG Player. I know that there is some pretty cool reprints in the Collector set, some modern reprints, some legacy cards. So yeah, you can go over to TCG Player and check that out now.
We have some new cards from Fallout, as Tori mentioned. So we have some new designs like the bobblehead cards, as well as new reprints. There was a really cool Hullbreaker Horror that we've seen, and the showcase foiling on those cards are really cool as well. So we'll be mentioning a bunch of different cards in this episode today, not just the Fallout stuff, because we're talking about kind of our history with Magic and Magic for beginners. So if you want to pick up any of those cool new commanders or pick up a new Precon to start with, a starter kit, any of those things, TCG Player is the place to do that.
TCG Player has it all, so be sure to check the link in our description below.
So today's featured patron is Car. Thank you to Car for being a patron.
Yes, our Patreon features 6 awesome tiers. They start as low as $1, and you can get access to our Discord, early access to the episodes, and in certain tiers, you can also get a token of the month and a sticker of the month drawn by moi. It's the best way to directly support this channel, so please be sure to check the link for our Patreon below.
And there's a different design every month. I don't know what we did for March. What was it?
For March, we have a little kawaii sticker of a sliver, and the token is a sapperling, and it's actually OC art by me.
Very cute. It's a cute little mushroom. So go over to our Patreon, check it out, and thank you for supporting us. All right, so I think the main question for a video like this is, why should you play? Obviously, if you're watching this video, you probably have some interest in this. Maybe somebody else sent you here, or if you are a veteran player, then feel free to leave some kind of information and insight for new players down in the description, or rather on the comment section. So Magic is the world's first trading card game. So if you didn't know, the game was created in 1993. It is as old as we are. And in the game, players are going to take turns casting various spells as well as battling out on the battlefield. So the appeal of the game is being able to play with a bunch of different cards. I believe there's over 25,000 cards currently.
30 years worth of cards.
30 years worth of cards. And there's new stuff coming all the time. The article I read that on, it was from 2022 from Star City Games. So we're in 2024 now. I can only imagine how many cards are going to be here at the end of the year, especially with the amount of sets and things we have coming out.
Yes.
Magic is a really great resource for skill building. So I know this is a fairly family-friendly game for the most part, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It doesn't mean it's just for kids. Obviously, we're grown adults that are playing Magic, and I think it is widely played by adults. But it is great for skill building. So I see people use it a lot in after-school programs, library programs, or even to teach their kids. And honestly, sometimes it just helps my brain too. I'm historically bad at math. I know there's the phrase math is for blockers, and that's just how Magic is. So Magic's really great for puzzle solving as well as critical thinking. I would also say it's good for reading a vocabulary as well, even though I'm still historically bad at reading those cards. But I think it's got a lot of resources in general if you are teaching somebody, or if you have a kiddo at home that might want to learn those new skills. It's a very different and fun way to do it. When I was taught Magic, I was told our commander is essentially a wizard, and then you have 99 spells in your deck that you get to cast. So I think it's a really fun way of looking at it too. It's got a great source of community.
It does. It has a great community. There's a bunch of different friendships you can make, relationship building in Magic, which I think is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I've had Magic explained to me as chess, but you bring your own pieces, a mix of chess and poker. So definitely like skill building, like you said, also helps with like analysis and really thinking on a macro level and on a micro level. You know, there's a lot of thought processes involved, and it just builds like good skills all around. I think that this is a great game for people to teach their kids. First of all, I think one of the best things about this game and why you should play it is it's a game that still, like, you can play in person and doesn't involve anything digital. So if power goes out, guess what? Go play some Magic. You know what I mean? Don't want to spend as much time on your phone? Go play some Magic.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool way to connect with your kids too if you want to pick up some commander decks or something.
Yeah. I think it's good because you can go play with your friends, and you can also, if you don't have friends that are playing this game, go to your local game store and create a community that way. And it also offers a variety of formats. So there's just about everything, including some like community made formats, which I think is really interesting. And so you don't have to play Magic one specific way because there's many ways to play it. I know that you like to play a variety of different formats.
I do. So there's a bunch of different formats. You can play 1v1 Magic, or you can play the 4-player of Commander. 1v1 formats, there is Pauper, which is a very, very fun format that I love recommending to new players because it is a 60-card format. However, it's made with commons, and only commons are legal in the format, so the decks tend to be on the cheaper side. So if you want to try playing these formats, which involve the same rules and skill level as something that's more competitive like Modern or Legacy, you still get that, but you don't have to worry about shelling out hundreds of dollars if you don't like it. You're not really at a loss.
Yeah, the decks are fairly cheap, which is nice, and I enjoyed that a lot. We started to learn how to play Magic on Commander, which we've talked about a few times as not being like the best way to learn how to play just because there's so many complicated things. But I think with Magic now, that is kind of like the premier way to do it. You're seeing a lot of new precons with every set that comes out. They're very accessible to go to your LGS and pick one up for like $60 and just start playing.
So I think one of the best ways to learn Magic currently is also through Arena. Arena is the online client for Magic the Gathering. You can play. Basically, they have their own formats on there that mirror those that are in paper, but there's a cool tutorial on Arena. You can play a bunch of different levels. They even give you some starter decks to try on there. There's little ranked leagues, so that way if you're a new player and you want to just, try out some of these starter decks, you're going to be paired into other people who are also playing them and also at the same skill level, so you don't have to worry about, going up against someone who's playing something absolutely cracked. Great way to learn and develop the skills, especially even if you are someone who's only played Commander and you want to get into a 60-card format or a competitive type format like, any sealed or anything else. That is probably the best way to transition and to learn.
Yeah, there's also at your local game store, there are some starter kits that Magic puts out every year. There's a couple of different ones that you could try out. Those are 2 decks that are ready to go. You can also pick up Jumpstart, which releases about every year. And those you basically just take 2 of the decks from the set, mesh them together, and then you're having a full deck ready to play. Those are more theme specific, so they'll be for like a certain type of archetype. And I think that's a great way to learn new different archetypes in general or try out different decks if you're not sure what kind of Magic you'd want to play. I know they also made some starter decks, or I think they were like precons last year that they made, like starter ones instead of the starter kits. I didn't really hear anything about them. I didn't hear like any great positive reception to them. I didn't hear like they are awesome for beginners. I mostly have heard the other 3 things that we talked about. So
right.
I would definitely start there, and I think that's a great thing for beginners. So a lot of that you can find at your local game store, and I would highly recommend asking them what they think like maybe the best precon is, because there's so many now, but we'll talk about a couple that we did enjoy in a little bit. So something that really helped me with when I started playing Magic was I just went to YouTube and I watched informational videos. I watched people playing the game, because watching people actually cast spells and do things and take their turns like was a lot easier than me just always physically doing it. I felt like a little nervous and a little anxious trying to do things on my own because I didn't feel very equipped to do so. I do like that Magic gives out in those packs the things that'll be like main phase, combat, second main, and they'll kind of go through everything you can do in those steps. But I wish they also had resource guides, which we talked about this before, but for keywords and different mechanics, because I think as a new player, you might be really excited to pick up a precon and you'll be like, what's lifelink? What's menace? What's prowess? Like all these very specific things, and not every card's going to have the text bubble that tells you what they are,
Yeah, and there's also so many conditions that matter with those too.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's talk about some channels that we would recommend for beginners.
Absolutely. So Tolarian Community College, also known as the Prof, one of the best channels to go to learn about Magic. Prof does a really good job covering all sorts of stuff. He has plenty of videos on how to play the game, about the products that come out, and it's just very educational. I think that's probably the channel to check out.
Yeah, I would also say Game Nights is another one. They are doing a lot of weekly different podcasts on different subject matter. They have everything from like set reviews to gameplay to questionnaires with like their entire team about different cards, different decks, and things, and set reviews like that. So you kind of get everything you could think of for Magic there, as well as profs. I say those are probably like the two channel most people know. I also think if you're looking for something that's like lore and history and art for Magic, Versus Cities is really great. That's a great way to kind of learn about just like not just the generic like here is your lore story. It's more of like what makes Magic Magic, and what makes the art, and what makes the history of Magic.
Yeah, there's also Spice 8 Rack. There's a really good lore video that Spice just put out. You can watch that if you want to learn more about the story behind Magic the Gathering, since there is 30 years of it. A lot of really cool characters. I think that's one of the things that makes Magic so great too, is there is world building behind it. The cards all have like a story to them. The story has been progressing now for a very long time, and it's really cool. So if you're into like fantasy stories, that's also something to enjoy.
Sorry, my cat is being awful today. We've had to pause multiple times, but he is a sweet baby.
He's putting his paws up in the air for those channels.
Yep. We do enjoy Spice 8 Rack. I know that Tori mentioned there's the lore video, but we asked about that literally around the same time it came out.
Yeah.
And probably 80 of you were like, you have to watch this video. So highly recommend checking them out. They do really great lore videos. I would recommend watching any sort of gameplay, anything that's like pretty active, to make yourself more comfortable, because I know I wouldn't feel confident going into an LGS space, even though everybody there is generally pretty nice. At least in my experience, I had a very friendly LGS where there was definitely days that you could go and play a Precon and learn with somebody else who's also learning to play a Precon. So they also do different nights. So there is modern nights, of course. There's things for Commander. So if you're looking for a specific format that you want to try or see just maybe what the right one for you is, I think that's a really great way of doing that. Let's talk about the best Precon for beginners. So when I started playing Magic, I got the Lateral Precon, and I hands down think this is probably the best Precon for beginners. Unfortunately, I don't think it's very accessible right now, and if it is, it's probably a little bit higher in price. This was put out when Call Time was released, kind of around the time that we started playing. This deck is only $65 if you get it at its cheapest value. I went and looked at the list the other day, $65, which is not bad for a Precon at all.
No.
And you can play it right out the box. It's a very simple synergy. It's a very simple game plan. The commander's very easy to understand. So that one I always recommend to new players. You can honestly probably upgrade it with another like $30 because elves are super cheap. My deck is a little more expensive because I have like tutors and like fancy cards in there, which you don't need, but I think it's a very simple, like I said, you do elves, you make 10 elves, you do damage with Lateral. It's pretty good. Do you have any other like Precons that you really enjoyed?
I think all of the Precons that have been coming out, especially the most recent ones for Murders at Karlov Manor, were really good. The Ixalan commanders were great. Any type of like aggro-based deck, like, you know, winning by attacking, I think is very easy to pick up and understand. I definitely don't recommend anyone that revolves around mechanics that could be a little confusing for a newer player. I know the first Precon I ever bought was the Mutate Precon. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I played it wrong for a good like 3 months because it was just, I just didn't get it. So I think any of those newer Precons that are tailored around one thing are pretty good to pick up.
I do think that's good. My problem with that is though, if there's a new mechanic like the cloak mechanic or something else that people don't understand, which just came out on those Precons, how am I as a new player supposed to know what that is? They do, I believe, have those pamphlets inside that are like, this is the theme, this is kind of what it does, but like I'm not gonna have a giant pamphlet out as I'm trying to play the game. I think the D&D Precons that came out recently were pretty good. I like that set a lot. And I do like the ones that just came out recently as well, especially because the four of them play together. So if you have a play group you want to try them with, you all could play together. But I do think there needs to be more like small educational hits. And there's definitely like notes on the cards, I think, for those Precons, which is good. But I just want to make sure they're always accessible for people who aren't familiar with the format. I think they're selling a lot to Commander players who already understand these things, and there's definitely room, of course, for new players with these Precons, but I just want to, emphasize that maybe it might look a little confusing at first, and don't be discouraged. Now you know where you should be watching things on YouTube. Where should you be playing? So we talked about Arena Online, of course. You could definitely do that. But if you're looking for a local game store near you, then you're going to go to the Wizard Store Locator. So you can put in what city you're in, and it will show you everything in your area. If you see something called a WPN store, that's one of those fancy stores. They got a ton of Magic product, very Magic focused. They have a good section for you and a lot of stuff. So any of your local game stores are fine. WPN stores are also fine. Like there is not a preference over the other ones, but the WPNs usually are like the Wizards registered like stores
Yeah,
that are
they're a
there.
premium store
Yes.
with premium products
So-
and cool stuff.
Yeah, I like that they have that as a resource because when I was trying to learn how to play, I didn't know that like local game stores really existed. I just
Yep.
knew you could buy things at Target, and then my friends like I knew my LGS was a board game shop, so I knew I can go there to play games, but I didn't know that there was specific shops that would be very Magic or D&D focused, stuff
Right.
like that. So that's a really nice resource.
Another good way to find people to play with is by going on the internet and looking up some Magic Discords. Discord is a great place to find a community of people who are playing. You can play over on Spell Table. It is a free website where you can play Commander through your webcam. All you need is a webcam and a mic, and you could just go on, make an account, and you can play with people from all over. There is even a like free play where you can just link up to other people already using the website. You know, if you don't have Discord or any other options with a big group. But that is one of the best ways to probably meet people and start playing more often. Some of the Discords I joined when I first started playing Magic, they had people playing all day, every single day. And I played for hours through Spell Table. And usually, most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, the players are very friendly and willing to help you and talk you through some game actions that you might be confused about. So it's also a great way to learn as well because, you know, if you have any questions, people who might have been playing longer than you are right there to give you some answers.
You can also look on your local community Facebook groups. There tends to be a lot of those for events, like if you don't have a local game store in your area, which some people have said, sometimes people will get together and go to a local restaurant or bar or something that has a play space to have those kinds of nights. So if you don't see anything directly close to you on the store locator, or if you're not comfortable playing online, then that's also an option for you as well. We do have really good Discord where we have game nights and people play on there all the time. So if you're looking for a place to do that, our Discord is literally on our dollar tier, so you can check that out. What is kind of in your opinion, what is the essential items for beginners? Because I think people see a ton of stuff and assume they have to have a big collection of things in their bags, but I think there's a couple things that are essential.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, after you buy a Precon or, you know, a pre-constructed deck and you make your deck, the most important thing to have is some sleeves for your cards. We have dragon shields and use dragon shields. That way, if you put them on there, your cards are protected. You don't have to worry about spilling your soda all over your cards. You don't have to worry about someone's fingerprints getting all over those, you know, crispy new cards you just got. So essentials are the sleeves. It's also the best way to prevent you know, you have some double face cards in Magic, you don't want to see the backside of them. That's why we put them in sleeves.
Yep. They also have the dual matte sleeves, which are better for hiding that portion of it as well. And so that is a great resource. You can check out Dragon Shield. We have a link in our description to shop for them. We also recommend bringing out a playmat. So you can find one playmat. We have a lot of playmats between the two of us.
We do.
And it's excessive. I don't think you need more than one. You can have multiple if you're a collector like we are. We like to have a bunch of different ones, but you can have just one playmat. You can get that from your LGS. I know Dragon Shield has some as well. We actually have some on Jank Mats, so if you're looking for ones, we have official Scrybabies mats on there. We also have Art of Tori and myself as our favorite commanders, so you can check that out too. And I would definitely say get some dice. You can find everything at your local game store as well. There's lots of cool dice maker online if you want some cool different art styles for your dice, I guess. But all you really need is a spin down and some D6s.
Yeah. And then last but not least, get yourself some deck boxes. We have a bunch right here from Gem TCG. Deck boxes are a great way to store your decks, just to make sure, again, that they're not just loose, falling all over the place. You don't want to lose your cards, or if you lose one, you don't know where it went, just put them in a deck box.
I've seen a lot of different forms of deck boxes. I've seen the paper bag, I've seen a plastic bag, I've seen a sandwich bag, I've seen
the McNugget container.
And I've seen like just cardboard boxes. So like you don't have to go all hard on a deck box if you don't want to, but I highly recommend them to prevent your decks from getting bent up, of course. That's super funny. They sent a McNugget. I enjoyed that one. What else do you put in your backpack? So we have sleeves, deck boxes, dice, Playmats. I like to usually bring some kind of notebook to take notes on or to keep score of life totals, which you can also do on your phone. We use Carbon. That's the app that we enjoy. But having some place to do life totals as well is always helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And aside from the essentials, it's always good to bring maybe a snack, water bottle. You never know, you might get a little hungry, a little bit thirsty when you're there all night playing some games. Life pad is definitely number one, though.
Yeah, I think that's a good one.
That's the one I always got to keep with me, because nothing worse than being like, crap, my phone's going to die.
Yeah.
Now I can't track my life anymore.
I also would say to bring any kind of reference guides that make you comfortable. When I started playing, I wrote out like every major keyword I saw on my friends' cards and was like, menace means this, lifelink means this. And it was just something that helped me refresh if I was playing stuff, because I didn't want to constantly ask people, which you can do. You can absolutely ask people at your table if you don't know what a card does, or you can ask to read a card. That is totally acceptable. But yes, so I would say bring that. And other than that, I feel like your LGS tends to have most of the things that we just named, especially things like snacks and drinks like that.
Yeah.
We tend to go heavier for like MagicCon and events and like jam pack our bags, but you don't have to go that hard. I also say for game nights, I try to bring like 2 or 3 decks when I'm going to the LGS. You don't have to have that many. I like to do that because I like to have a variety. So I usually will bring like a Precon, a casual deck, and then a CDH deck so I could play for different formats or power levels throughout the night. So I would recommend, if you're getting more into Magic and you want to try another deck out, maybe you get like 1 or 2 and you'll have a variety. So if you're there all day, you're not playing the same deck all day.
Yeah.
We have a couple questions, not too many, but if you do have questions and you want to leave them down in our description below, we'll probably do some kind of follow-up video about something revolving this, or we'll just answer them so you can leave them there. Mr. Johnny Mac asks, what are our top tier, S tier things that we would want to see in new and established players to the game? The rookie player mistakes that you make or made that you want the new generation of players to learn. So like, what are some mistakes you made in the beginning with Magic, whether it be through gameplay, with purchasing things, like LGS experiences? What are some kind of experiences that you want to show?
Let's see. First and foremost, when you get cards, don't sell them right away. Because you never know if you're going to need them, and you might have to buy them back and feel like a big buffoon.
Yeah.
So definitely hang on to your cards.
I would say at least like a play set. So get 4. If you get a few of those cards, Commander, you're only going to need 1 of them, but you could switch between decks. But I always try to keep 4 cards. Anything else can go right into the sale bin for sure.
Yeah. I also think that as far as if you are trying to get into Magic and you want to start playing like comp Magic, you want to, get into the world of Pauper, Modern, or you want to start grinding RCQs and RCs and get to the PT one day. I think the try before you buy method is super important. I was fortunate to, when I started playing the game and wanted to get into Modern, I had a friend who literally printed out pictures of every single card in a deck, slid them over a basic land, and said, let's play a couple matches, see how you like the deck, and if you like it, then you can purchase it. So I think trying before you buy with, some of the more expensive formats is definitely really important to do. Trying those out online, like either on Arena or on Magic Online.
You can also do it on Moxfield too. Moxfield has a playtest feature.
Moxfield has a playtesting feature, which is really great. And also just talking to friends. One thing we did learn, or especially I learned in the Magic community, is that a lot of the competitive Magic players do own multiple copies of decks. And they're more than happy to, if you have a good friend, maybe they could lend you a deck to try out for a night at an F&M or something, and you can try it out and see if you like it. And if you really like it, then you know what playstyle is for you, and you don't have to worry about thinking, am I going to be a colossal waste of money on this deck, or will it be okay?
Yeah. I think another thing is, don't feel like you have to buy into every set. If a set is not for you or is not serving you in the way that you would like it to, do not feel obligated to have to buy those things. I fall into the line of, I like to open shiny cards, and opening packs gives me serotonin. It is obviously so much cheaper just to buy the singles that you want or that you're looking for. So that is kind of like it's not like a mistake, but it's just kind of like a thing that I tell myself, like, you don't have to buy an entire box of Magic cards. You could just buy a couple.
You can just buy a couple.
Just buy a couple if you
And
want to do that.
I think the best piece of advice I've gotten with learning Magic is don't feel afraid to look stupid.
Yes.
Ask questions. Don't feel like if you make a mistake that everyone's going to make fun of you and laugh. People still, after playing competitively for 30 years, punt games and make big mistakes. It is just part of the learning process.
We do it all the time.
We do it all the time. Pro players do it all of the time. It happens. So don't be afraid to ask for help or, be a little bit vulnerable with the game. You're not going to be the best player after playing for a year or maybe even 15 years, but that's okay. And I think once you accept that I'm going to start this journey and I'm not going to be the best at it right away, you'll have a much easier time.
I think that's also interesting what you're saying, because I've had an experience at an LGS where I knew more about what my cards did than a veteran player who was like, no, this doesn't do it this way. And I was like, yes, it does. And we checked with our judge there and it was correct. So I think it's easy to get like in the mindset of like, oh, I don't know more because someone's more experienced than me, or not feeling like you can talk about those things when this is like a place to constantly learn. Whenever we make like, well, not whenever we make a big mistake, but whenever I make a big mistake in general when I'm playing and somebody's like, oh, you could take it back. I'm like, no, I need to like learn from this thing that I did, because if not, I'm going to keep making that mistake in this game. And I think Commander players are pretty good at being forgiving, at least like in my experience, and like talking about stuff. So if you go to the LGS to play Commander and you're like, I don't really get what this card does, like somebody's going to explain to you. And if you're not sure about it, usually there's like a head person that works there or a judge or somebody that you can talk to. Because I know a lot of local judges just go to play at the LGS and they'll happily, answer things like that for you. And making mistakes and feeling dumb is like, I think just kind of part of it.
It's part of anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the only way you get better. Something I also want to say is our Discord. I know I'm hyping it up a lot, but we also do have a space in there for if you're building decks and you want people to kind of look over them and talk about cards, you could do that. You can also talk about your play experiences. We have spaces for that. We also have just like things for our pets and food and things to talk about in there, but there is a lot of really Magic focused stuff for beginners. Yeah. So there's a lot of different deck specific threads for pauper decks or for other things you want to try out. Like I mentioned earlier, there is gameplay on there, and there is just kind of like a very friendly community space for beginners if that's something you're looking for. I know Prof also has a really great Discord for that. I know Game Nights does too. Spike Feeders. There's so many different content creators that you enjoy that have great spaces to play and to learn. I also want to mention MagicCon too. This past weekend, I spent all day from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. putting on a Learn to Play CDH event to teach people. So if you're looking for other places like that, things like that happen at MagicCon. I know Birds of Paradise had a whole area where they were teaching people as well as Magic Kids. So there's even like Magic Kid booths at Gen Con or booths like this at other events that are local to you. So if you aren't finding a specific MagicCon near you or an LGS that is constantly popping for what you're looking for, sometimes the average event will have a Magic play space, so that might be something worth checking out too. I think that's all the advice and stuff I have. Do you have any other notes for beginners? And this is kind of like a part one. We're getting our feelers out and kind of giving us this is what I recommend to anybody who comes up to us at a MagicCon or comes up to us at an event and is like, what is making you comfortable? How'd you get into Magic? What kind of play space, right?
I guess some other advice I would have is when you're a newer player, it's very easy to think like, wow, every player around me is so good because they've been playing for so long. Playing for a very long time does not make you very, very good. I've learned that the hard way also. When you do ask people for advice in Magic, make sure it's someone who you can trust, and also make sure that, not that you have to back everybody up with a resume, but if you're looking for really good tips on high competitive levels of play, there are pro players who do have Patreons and Discords, and they'll teach you the correct process. It's very hard to unlearn bad processes that you've learned early on. It's like kind of like if you learned how to ride a bike in a bad way as a kid and you still ride it into adulthood, it's going to be harder to fix it then.
Well, yeah, I think that applies to matches too, right? Like you could be thinking your card's doing something and somebody else says it's not. Like call a judge.
Call a judge.
Do not be afraid to call a judge.
Yes,
yeah.
But for sure, any type of learning you want to do, if anyone ever says like, let me give you some pointers, you can say like, yeah, give me some pointers. But also, if you really, really want to learn more, especially in like the competitive field, it is worth it to check out some of the Patreons from people who do coaching and who do this full time and are very good at the game.
I think that's good advice too. Well, that's everything we have today. Thank you for listening. We are over on Spotify and Apple if you'd like to leave us a review. Of course, we mentioned a bunch of cool places that you can check out today to support us. So Dragon Shield we mentioned. We also mentioned TCG Player, our sponsor. We also have our new Playmats down in the description below. And of course, our Patreon where you can come play Magic. You can learn about all the Magic things. You can hang out with us, chat with us. You can see cute pictures of our pets. We post everything on there. So definitely check out our Patreon as well. And thank you for listening.
See you guys later.